everyone. Sorry for that interruption. I just thought it might be better if we break this into shorter little pieces. Okay, so I also stopped in a bit of a weird place, I think. We were looking at shape. The previous activity that you did was the positive negative. So now you are carrying on. It's still activity 1.3. You are going to be looking at the differences between organic and inorganic. So if you think about organic and the whole craze that's going on, it's all about natural foods and making sure there's no preservatives and things like that. So organic just means natural. So if a man was involved in making it, if it's been processed in any way by man, then it is no longer organic. It is inorganic. Okay, and please don't make up weird things and weird words. Either use man-made, inorganic, or organic when describing it. Okay, there's some really strange words that people use when they are describing organic things. So what you're going to do now, you're going to draw a contour drawing. If you don't want to redraw a contour drawing, it's okay. You can go back and use the one that you did in the previous activity about line. But what you're going to do is each piece of your shoe that you are going to draw, I'll show you an example. Let me just find it. Okay, so here's my example. You're basically going to take your drawing of your shoe, so I chose a high heel shoe here, and you are going to fill it up with organic things. So the actual shoe is an inorganic object. You can't find a shoe growing on a tree, so therefore it is man-made. It is inorganic. So you take your inorganic shoe and you fill it up with organic objects. So you can see I've got some petals in here. There's a cat, okay? Obviously, cats are natural, not man-made. And then in the background here, I've even used some vegetables, some fruit, okay? So you can fill up your picture. If you do decide to do the background though, try to make it a different color. So like here I've used purples and pinks for the shoe, but then that background I've used green just to make that contrast. Otherwise everything's going to start blending into one another and you won't be able to see anything. Okay, so that is the activity for the inorganic and organic. So take your shoe contour drawing or draw a new contour drawing of a shoe and then add in all your details using magazines, cut them out, something a bit more fun for you to actually do while you're sitting at home bored. Okay, so you can actually look at textures through that. So the different textures that are truly organic and truly inorganic, and fit that into your shoe. Okay, well there is my example anyway. So any style of shoe that you'd want to do. Okay, the next thing is tone or value. Okay, so I think value is more the American kind of way of saying things, but it is acceptable to talk about the value. We normally talk about tone or even shading. So shading, we're looking at the darks and lights. And another nice little activity that you can do just to practice would be an activity like this, where you've got your ball and you try to shade it. So find where your light source would be. In this case, your light source is going to be coming from the top right here. We can see that our light source is from that angle because we've got the lightest part of the ball being there and then fading into darkness. We can also see because of the way that the shadow is cast. Okay, so the shadow is formed by blocking out of the light. So wherever the light would shine, the ball's now blocking it, casting that shadow behind it. Okay, so don't put your shadow into weird places like on this side because the light is only blocked out at that section there. Okay, you can also do a tonal shading scale, okay, just to practice in your grading and see how you can actually grade it from the one to the other. Also, you'll notice, which I completely despise with kids, is to smudge. So you can see this is drawn with a pencil. When this person shaded, they did not use their pencil shavings and their finger and smudge everything. Okay, please don't smudge when you are shading. Even if you do use your pencil to shade, your finger is not a tool. Please don't use it to shade. Okay, so an important term that you should learn now, and even going up to matric, and if there's any matrics watching it, please learn this word if you don't know it already. Chiaroscura. Okay, so chiaroscura is an Italian word and it means big contrast. So it's the depicting in two-dimensional art of the effects of light and shadow as a means of rendering the solidity of bodies, especially when they are strongly contrasted. Okay, so it's a strong contrast. We've got our dark shadows, our light lights, creating the form of things. And remember what form was? It was the three-dimensionality of things, making things look like they are not flat. So using our shadows and our shades for that. Right, so for activity 1.4 on page 13, this activity might take you a bit longer. I want you guys to do a life-size tonal drawing, which means that it's got to fill your paper up. Okay, it's got to take up majority of your page and you are going to shade it. So it's a full shaded drawing. Try to do it to the best of your abilities. Okay, if you want to use different types of shading, you can try, but it's going to make things a little bit more tricky. Okay, so I suggest try to just use blending like they've used in this picture. So nice smooth shading. Okay, grading from darks into lights. Try to make that grade gradual. Look at the folds in your shoes. There are going to be pieces that are darker. There are going to be pieces that are lighter. Look at textures, like textures on the shoelaces, the textures on the seams of the shoes. Okay, once again, you can do any shoe that you want to, but a school shoe is going to be a bit easier. It's got nice highlights with the leather, and it's also got less textures. So we've got the smooth texture and a little bit of rough, so it might be easier for you to actually start with a school shoe. If you want to then go into another type of shoe, okay, then you can move into that afterwards. Okay, so moving into texture. By this stage, usually people are sick of looking at shoes and doing activities with shoes. So I've said that the next activity my kids can do with a hand instead of a shoe. So when it comes to texture, like we discussed with line, you can be really, really, really boring and bore your teachers and bore the markers by saying the texture is rough, the texture is smooth. Okay, that's something that we hear all the time and it's really, really boring. So you've got to add some life, inject some energy into it and try to describe things that are a bit more interesting. So, for example, a texture can be coarse, it can be slimy, okay, like really gross, wet textures, bristly, furry, matted, scratchy, wrinkly or wrinkled. Okay, a scratchy texture is so much more interesting to read about than a rough texture. And a slimy texture is so much more interesting to read than smooth. Okay, so try to branch out your adjectives. Try to use words that are a bit more descriptive. Okay, if you had to actually feel it, put your hand on that object, how would it feel to you and how would you describe that feeling? Right, when it comes to painting especially, we get two different kinds of textures. So we get simulated textures and real textures. Simulated textures can also be called illusionary textures, okay? And those textures are textures that are seen but not felt. So if we look at this picture of the man in the bottom here, okay, even if you take your hand now and rub it on your computer screen or your phone screen, can you feel anything? No, you can't feel his moustache, you can't feel his hair, but you can see that his skin is a different texture to his shirt. You can see that his hair is rough. Okay, you can see the textures, but if you feel your phone, you feel nothing. There is no texture to be felt. It is illusionary or simulated. Okay, it is 2D, seen and not felt. Real texture is actual texture, so you can actually feel the work. So if you look at this, okay, even though you are still looking at a picture, you can see that the paint has been applied really thickly. Okay, so when this dries, it's going to have grooves in it. And if you had to actually feel it, it would be rough. If you had to go outside and feel the grass, you would actually feel that grass, and that grass would be real texture. If you created a sculpture and you took fur and you placed the fur onto your sculpture, or you made a shirt for the person or a jacket for the person, and the jacket is made out of real fabric, that fabric would be real texture. You would actually be able to feel with your fingers what that felt like. Okay, so simulated, I can see it, but I can't feel it. Real texture, I can see it and I can feel it. Okay, so we're looking at like Van Gogh when he applied paint thickly, creating depth, creating movement in the paint itself. Okay, so like I said, the shoes might be starting to bore you already, so you can do your hand for this one as well. Trace the shape of your foot a few times. If you're going to do your hand, I suggest only trace it once, okay? Um, and then for each one of the fingers, or for each foot that is overlapping, or each space, you're going to do a thing called frottage. Okay, so frottage is a technique that you probably have done before, probably in primary school or even nursery school, where you take an object and you put it underneath the paper. So a lot of the time you do it with coin. So you put your 5 Rand coin under the page and you rub over it with your pencil. You shade over it. And with that shading, you actually see the form of that coin coming through the paper. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to find 5 different textures at least, or 6, one for each finger, one for the palm, and you are going to rub the texture onto the page. So you're going to take your pencil, lie your pencil down on the paper so that it's not on the point. Okay, because if your pencil is on the point, you're just going to get scratchy lines. You need to actually lie it flat on the paper, and then also try to use a soft pencil, so either a 4B or a 6B, and then do it. Rub over your surface and get a texture coming through. So you can walk around your house, walk around outside, find bricks, find tables, or textures of jerseys, those kinds of things that are going to make a nice texture coming through. Look at the concrete outside your house. Maybe there's a mat at your back door that's got a certain texture. So try to find different textures and create different patterns through that.